What if you are a person who is hiding slaves in your basement, and a slave owner knocks on your door and asks you if you were hiding any slaves? How would you respond? Immanuel Kant would say you may not tell a lie to the slave owner. You might tell a lie because you think the consequences are good if you tell the truth. Then the slave owner will seize these slaves and send them to the farm, and possibly to be punished and whipped, or some may be even hanged as an example for the rest. However, Kant says morality has nothing to do with calculating good or bad consequences. Morality is following a universal duty. What Kant tells us is that morality has nothing to do with emotions or inclinations. Why not? Because our emotions and inclinations are in the world of experience, and the world of experience is a world of matter in motion, determined by necessity. Similarly, Kant thinks that morality has nothing to do with happiness. That means also that morality has nothing to do with goods or good. But why? Because goods and the good attract our will. We are back in the world of appearances and of that deterministic matter and motion. Finally, morality has nothing to do with consequences. So you might be wondering right now, if morality has nothing to do with emotion, with passion, with inclination, with perceptions of happiness, or the good, or consequences, then what in the world can morality be about? Duty alone has to be the justification for morality. What happens when someone sacrifices something that they want for the sake of duty? How about when someone gives up their life, risking themselves to save someone else? Then we say that action merits esteem. That is a moral action. So Kant wants to understand duty most clearly when it's against any inclination. Duty for the sake of what? Kant says duty for the sake of a moral law in itself. Now here comes the question, where do we get that moral law? How do we find it? Because it can't be a good or happiness or a law of nature. How do we know what our duties are? Kant gives us a way to decide this. He calls it the categorical imperative. Categorical meaning there are no exceptions to it, and imperative meaning it makes a command on us. The easiest way to see this is through an example he gives. He uses the example of someone who is in a difficult situation. They are in need. They need money, for example. And the only way they can get the money is to promise to pay it back. But they know that they can't ever pay the money back. The question is, can you make a false promise when you need to? Here's how Kant answers the question. He says, universalize that into what would be a law of nature and see if you can accept it. In the particular instance that Kant gives, I'm faced with a question, may I make a false promise underneath? Convert that to a maxim. What's the rule under which I am proposing to do this particular action? The maxim would be something like this. When someone is in need, he may make a false promise. That's the universal maxim that I am proposing to follow in this particular act. Finally, Kant says pretend that that maxim has a law of nature, so that everyone who is in need would have the right to make a false promise. Make it a law of nature in your imagination. Could you want a world in which everyone could make a false promise when they are in need? Kant says clearly not. But why? Because if everyone made false promises in need, then all trust would break down and society and social cooperation would be impossible. So Kant thinks that we must somehow give the moral law to ourselves in order to be free. Kant thinks we must be self-legislators. We can't derive that law from anywhere else. We have to give it to ourselves in our particular reason. This is why Kant says that moral action must be autonomous. It must be free. The word autonomy is rooted in a contraction of auto, nomos, self-law. We have to give ourselves our own law. Now, Kant's understanding of this is very demanding and exacting, as we might have noticed. If I'm going to be moral, all my actions must be such that the maxim that determines my action, I could will as a universal law, be independent of all consequences, independent of all inclinations, independent of my own good, independent of all of my concern for happiness. That's very demanding. Today, when we think about autonomy, we tend to think of it as my right to do whatever I want, so long as it does not harm anyone else. We take it to mean my right to create myself to determine my own ends. But that is very different than what Kant meant by autonomy. Our choices and actions, no matter how we deem them autonomous, is a false claim. Since our very existence has already left a footprint in this reality, we fool ourselves within a framework that is dictated by a perception of misconstrued ideals that only fit our reasoning. However, if this principle is applied as a general rule, can society even exist? Can laws and social construct coexist in this perception? Self-autonomy can only be a reality if we detach ourselves from any resemblance of a civilization and roam and coexist in the wild, where this same ideal is bound in the same framework of nature itself. We only select what fits our narrative and condemn the same narratives when it is applied to us. Kant, however, provides a framework of self-law which determines our moral action. However, we cannot derive this objective choice in a moral standard independently. He looks at a society and environment and inherence of an inherited view. This, however, does not explain its origin, even if we look at ourselves as the executor of the moral law. The same moral law that would be acted upon whether slaves are kept anywhere on this planet, the same moral choice and action would still be applied. If all humanity derives its moral laws or self-laws, do we realistically believe humanity would have survived until today?